Hello everyone, this is Harley from Garden FL, and in today's video we are going to be pruning sugar apples, also known as Annona squamosa. Now we are actually going to be doing this right before springtime, or right in the beginning of springtime. And there's actually no late time to do this. Some people actually did the pruning of their Annonas kind of in mid-winter, but you can actually do it as well when your Annonas are pushing out fresh, new green growth. So that's what we're going to do today. And the benefits of pruning your Annonas is that once you prune them, they actually can focus more energy on the growth. And also Annonas also flower on new growth. So if you want a lot of flower buds in the beginning of springtime and just want explosive new growth, I highly recommend to prune your Annonas. Now this Annona, actually we're going to prune about 1/3. As you see, it has long lanky branches from previous spring season. It grew really long. And also the benefits of pruning them, we will actually train the branches so that they can actually hold much bigger and stronger fruit. So let's get started. So just so we get a better idea of the sugar apple that we're going to be pruning today, as you see here it is. It stands about 6 feet tall and it is currently in a 30-gallon pot. As you see, this is the pot right here. This is actually the trunk of the sugar apple, and as you see, the sugar apple actually has a pretty girthy trunk going all the way up the tree. And as you see, when your sugar apple is starting to push little buds of new growth like this, as well as this as well, this is how you know the sugar apple is ready or is able to be pruned right now. So when your sugar apple actually has previous growth from last season and actually looks a bit lanky, I highly recommend you to trim your tree. Just because, as I said, when you trim your tree, the energy is then focused to these new growths, but also wherever you cut to, below where you cut will also get much stronger, and able to support the future fruit. So this is some type of growth that we're going to be trimming. As you see, it's kind of very lanky. It's not that strong, and if a fruit were to grow in here, if a sugar apple were to grow, it will very easily just drag this branch down and try to break the branch. So the reason why we trim sugar apples is, like I said, to focus the growth back towards the branches below it, and now actually invigorate these branches and make them much more girthier and stronger. And when sugar apples grow kind of like in a compact way, it's just really beneficial for the sugar apple tree. So let's get pruning, and I'm going to show you what branches I will be pruning. So we're actually going to start off by trimming the left side of the sugar apple tree, this portion. So here we have this branch of the sugar apple, and as you see up close, what we're going to want to trim on this sugar apple is going to be right about here. As you see, it's okay to also cut off new growth that is actually starting to grow. You just want to keep in mind where you want the branch to kind of branch out of, and also wherever you cut below that, it will be invigorated. So you always want to keep that in mind when you're pruning your sugar apples and kind of develop the future canopy in your mind. Right about here is fine. As you see, remove this much of the sugar apple, which is actually a lot, but as you see, a lot of it is old growth, and now this will just really focus on this new growth right over here. And this area you can clean up a little bit too. As you see, sometimes you have these little tiny twigs from last year's growth, and this you can easily just trim off. Sometimes you have these little new growth growing out, and sometimes I'd like to trim some of these off, just to clean it up a little bit. Just because this as well, if it grows out, it'll be a tiny little branch. Now at this time as well, if you want, you can also strip your sugar apple leaves, and this will also too just invigorate the tree to push out more heavier growth. So it's very easy to just remove the leaves right now. I'm actually doing this today. It is March 31st, 2021. So as you see right now, all your Annonas should be budding out. So when they bud out is an ideal time to start pruning them. So we're actually going to be trimming the right portion of the sugar apple tree now. And right over here is the right branch. As you see, the right branch as well is very out leading, and I'm just going to trim it back just so it won't be as long. So all we're going to simply do for this sugar apple branch, as you see, I want it to be about cut right here is about good length. So we're going to go like this. This much is going to be cut off, which looks like a lot, but in the end it's going to be really good for the sugar apple. And like always, you can always remove the dead leaves. Don't remove the fresh new leaves, which will be these leaves that are growing. Always remove the dead, not the dead, but the old leaves that were growing from previous season. You can choose to remove them. It will actually kind of clean up the sugar apple, or you could leave them. And I'm also cleaning up these little tiny branches as well. That kind of will just grow much more vigorous if you clean up the branches themselves. And like I said, the only reason I am doing this is because I'm already seeing the new green growth coming out, such as this green growth and this one. You're perfectly fine to remove these leaves and start the pruning process of your sugar apple. And this overall just ensures them a much more vigorous growing season. So here we are going to prune the rest of the sugar apple tree, and I'm just going to take this actually down one notch more. And like I said, it's perfectly fine to remove these little tiny branches. So we're actually going to take a look at these lower branches right here. As you see, there's a bunch of kind of older growth By older growth, I just mean older leaves, and we can just strip that like that. And as you see, this reveals the new growth that was trying to grow, and the new growth you don't want to really mess with. We're just going to cut it back to where this new growth is actually growing from, right there. And then up top here, we're just actually going to cut this back right about there. Can remove this stuff. Now once it's all stripped, you see how much cleaner it looks. I removed all the dead leaves, and this just leaves the new growth that was already growing, that was trying to grow already. And this is really good for the new growth because now it allows much more sunlight to penetrate these new leaves, and also makes it much easier for air to move through this and, you know, move through the canopy. So now we're actually going to trim these little this little branch right here, and this branch I'm just going to cut back all the way right here. As you see, now it's just a nice little cut, and also you see how much more sunlight can now penetrate the new growth. So I'm just going to now finish up trimming the sugar apple, and you're going to see how the canopy is sort of going to form. Now, like I said, when you trim your sugar apple, it's going to look very different from mine, but the concept is pretty simple. You always want to maintain a nice form to your sugar apple, as in the branches going up and crowning, and you always want to keep these main branches, and especially the trunk of the sugar apple, very thick and girthy. And the way you can accomplish that is by always, before spring season or in the beginning of spring, like I said, it's March 31st today, and all these Annonas are pushing out new growth, is now the time to, you know, remove big portions of the sugar apple to allow them to bud out. You know, this is refreshing to them, this invigorates them. As you see, the sugar apple now overall looks much more clean than it did in the beginning. As you see, the sugar apple leaves are actually much more visible to the sunlight now, and this just benefits the sugar apple tree in many ways. And also this opens up all the buds now on the bark to now push new growth. So overall, this is just a really good treatment for the sugar apple, and a really good trimming that I recommend everyone do for the sugar apple trees. So here's another sugar apple tree I have, and I figured I'd just trim it very fast so you can see what the process is like once again. As you see, this sugar apple is just very lanky from last season's growth, and this one is also as well in a pot. As you see, this sugar apple tree is not only pushing out new growth, as you see, but it also still has last year's new growth as well. You can tell because the leaves are more burnt at the tips and they're not as green and fresh as the new growth. So as you see, to very quickly trim this one, as you can observe, the trunk of the tree is just one nice pencil trunk. It's not too thick yet, but during this trimming we're going to train it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the long and lanky branches and easily cut them to about a third. As you see, take any long and lanky branches down, and also remove any dead growth that you see. And also, when you're cutting this, it's also very important to take note where the new buds are pushing out of. As you see, as I'm making the cuts on the sugar apple, I am observing these little green buds that are actually pushing out, and these are actually new sugar apple leaves. So I'm cutting just before those, because this will actually invigorate and push all the energy towards these new buds, and this will actually grow out and push new flower growth and also new leaf growth. And as you see, all along the sugar apple branch, you actually see where it's budding out, and that's where I'm also looking at before I cut. So continuing with the trimming, I'm going to trim the top now. And as you see, the top is very lanky and pencily. If a sugar apple were to fruit up here, it'll actually just go like this and fruit really bad, and literally tear the whole tree in half. So that's why we want to keep this very well trimmed. I'm actually going to remove about this much. So this removes actually a lot of length of the sugar apple tree. And I'm just going to remove any lanky kind of branches that remain. Also just remove any dead growth. And this branch over here is also very lanky, same idea. If this were to fruit, literally it will just go all the way this. And this sugar apple trunk is so thin, it's like a Sharpie girthness, so it's not ready to support kind of that sort of branching. So we're just gonna help it out by cutting. Like I said, I'm gonna watch out where the bud growth is. This is good. This much, so look at this much that I cut off. This is a lot. But this leaves the sugar apple tree much more shorter, much more compact, and also as you see the new growth is pushing out, and this will just overall turn into a really healthy sugar apple canopy in the future. So here is the sugar apple that we just trimmed, and as you see, the trimmings that we did are just seem like a lot to the sugar apple, but in the end it will just help it very much. As you see, that's the pot, but overall it's just a very beautiful canopy that it's going to form. So everyone, thank you so much for watching this video on pruning your Annonas. Now, like I said, it is ideal to start pruning your Annonas in the beginning of spring or before spring started, kind of like midwinter time. But overall, your Annona will grow nonetheless, given a proper pruning. So everyone, I hope this video helped you on your Annonas. If you have any other questions on growing sugar apples, or you just have any questions on how to germinate sugar apples, or any problems growing sugar apples, let me know in the comments. I would like to try to help you out as much as I can. So thank you guys once again. This is Harley from Garden FL, and I hope you have a great day. Bye bye now.